Here we go. Rick Rescola. Well, we hear a lot about Rick Rescola tonight. Born 27th of May 1939. From Hale in Cornwall, went to America when he was 23. That's just the beginning of it. Hello, Cornwall. We needed to recognise where he was born. Anybody know the ice cream shop down in Foundry there? Right next door. Right next door. This is where Rick was born. Penpole School. Don't look like that now, but this is when Rick and Mervyn were going to school at Penpole School. This will take you to. They both won Hale, Foundry, and Penpole School awards, minor scholarships. We've got Mervyn Sullivan, the late Mervyn Sullivan there. You can hardly see it up there, look next to the thing. Cyril Rescola, that's what he was called in school. And they've got G. Norman Woolcock. Mr. Woolcock lived up to Connor Downs, but they were all buddies, all friends forever, a long time, or lifelong friends. Rick Rescola got a wildlife garden in there to the Penpole School. His wife Susan come over, and that's been all recognised now, and it's a fantastic place. I went in there last week. This is the gates. You can see they locked me out. I won't let go in there. That's Penpole School. That's the best photo I could get at the time. This is a memorial to Rick Rescola, which is right opposite where he was born, right opposite there. Now, Hale Old Cornwall, we've taken on the task, but not a task at all. We're greatly honoured to be able to keep that clean and tidy. And there's Jan, Mervyn's Jan Sullivan over there. That's Jan's late husband. Mervyn is planting a tree right in Rick's memorial garden. So Rick and Mervyn are together again. That's the thing. And then what we did as well, right next is a seat. So we put there Mervyn Sullivan, and he's right next to Rick there as well. And then we got Brian Sullivan, and that was Mervyn's older brother. Sadly passed away a year or two ago. And he was Cornwall Society, he was our president as well. Now these cups, we've been selling the cups, well, they're going right there, but there's a few cups left. I don't really want to buy any more, but we're selling these for a £5. They cost £4 to produce, so we're making £1 on them. If anybody wants, so we've got I Love Hale on it. Even if you come from Bristol, Hale's good, isn't it, really? I took some to Devon week before last, and I sold 5 of them in Devon. So, that's the lovely, this is what, sadly, before Mervyn passed away, this was not a Mervyn Sullivan painting, because these are the Mervyn Sullivan in the back there. They're the Mervyn Sullivan paintings, mainly the arbour. The one over there is a Mervyn Sullivan painting. But look at this, a bike with square wheels. You can tell how Hale's coming on now, can he? But that really, we've got 1,000 cards printed, and it went like wildfire. One of our ladies, was she too one, I better not say too much, but went round to Druggy Street and St John Street, and they've had to put all new locks on their doors to try and keep her out. But she's done a fantastic job, I got to say that. Oh, Hale's three's finest men here, look at them all. There's one there. This is when we started to take over the memorial and give it a bit of a spring clean. So, but we're trying to keep on top of it. And of course, 27th of May, it will be his birthday. So we always put flowers there. And then on 9/11, I go down there at 8:20. Well, I go down about 8:25, but 8:46 in the morning, our time, but we call it American time, and we have a little service there in front of Memorial. Normally my sister with my iPad takes a few pictures and one thing, and then we send them to America because they're 5 hours behind us. So when Susan wakes up, we've done our little service over in England to remember him. Now I put this in, they're going down to Harvey's in Hale now, but this here building there is just up by the mill pond, Grover's Road that's called. Well, Sissy, that was Rick's mum. He always thought it was her sister, but it was actually his mum. So he's brought up by his grandparents, really. But Sissy, his mum, lived there. And when he came over in the year 2000, he wasn't happy because he felt that she was an elderly lady, she wasn't very well, and he didn't want her to, when he go back to America, to fall down and injure herself. So he bought the bungalow right opposite the mill pond. And that's where she stayed for the rest of her. And one other little thing is that she never knew that her son had died in 9/11, but she sadly died in 2002. So nobody really told her. So here we are, 8:46. A plane crashed into the North Tower between floors 93 and 99. 9:03, another plane hits the South Tower between floors 77 and 85. South Tower collapses at 10:05. North Tower 10:28. Rick's action saved, which you'll hear in the video in a minute. I won't give it too much away. Over 2,700 lives. Do you want me to read all these as well? American Airlines flight, well, they've flown into the North Tower and said everybody perished on it. I'll go on from them. Now, you can hardly see it. I went to America. Look up in the top right-hand corner. There's a little splodge up there. That's the plane about 5 seconds before it hit the North Tower. That's it there. And then United flights, that was that one, 51 passengers flown into the South Tower 9:03. You see, when they hit the North Tower with a plane, Rick was always, well, you'll see with the videos, but he was always told, that he was head of security. You do what? So the New York people said, oh, stay in your rooms, don't worry, in your flat things, don't matter, stay there, it'll be all right. And he said, I'm in charge of security. And he had 18 minutes, really, from the first plane that went into the second plane, and he got 2,700 down. I should have said as well, before I began the Twin Towers, they started building them in about 1969, 110 floors high each they were, and they opened them in 1973. That's the only picture I could get. There's the plane going into the South Tower. This one going into the Pentagon, we always think it's just 2 planes, but it's 4 planes. Actually, one of them was taken over by the terrorists. And that was flown into the Pentagon building at 9:37. That's the building in part of the Pentagon where the plane went in. Of course, the 4th one that we know, it crashed into a field in Shanksville. They was going to Washington, D.C. The passengers had their phones, and they could see on their phones what was happening to the towers. So they all decided they would rush the hijackers. So they even though they took the plane over, they overpowered some of them, but sadly the plane crashed into Shanksville in a field, and everybody was perished. Some of the awards: the Silver Star, the Purple Heart, 2 Bronze Stars, the Vietnamese Cross of Gallantry with Gold Star, the statue at Fort Benning, the GWR train named in his honour, the Presidential Citizens Medal awarded in 2019. I put down there, America lost a man, but Cornwall lost a son. This is the medal that was given to Susan by the former President of America, President Trump, in 2019. And I do have a copy of that, which Mr. Kirkham has got. If people want to see it later on, please go over and see that man there and have a look at what it is. There we are. Right, we'll start now. There's about 8 little short videos, all right? That's what it'll be for a minute. I can have a rest now. No, I don't want to sit down. I'm okay. I got growth.
Hello, I'm Nick Snyder. I'm the founder of the National Museum of Patriotism in Atlanta, Georgia. Today, we are creating a film to share with you the story of an American hero, Rick Rescorla. Rick was the vice president in charge of security at Morgan Stanley on that tragic day, September the 11th, 2001. Rick's story is unique in many respects. We think you'll find it to be a fascinating story, and one that will inspire you to reach for greater heights in this country as you watch the story of one man who gave all. We'll begin this story by sharing with you one of 6 of the individual areas of information on Rick. The first one we will share will be entitled Genesis of a Warrior.
You'll stop now. On one of the videos, you'll hear a gentleman called Dan Hill was his best friend. He was his lifelong friend, there's no doubt about that. But Rick's best friend of all, I've been asked, I've been to America, his best friend that went to America was called Jim Driver. He was an Irishman, and they was over there for 3 months before they went to England. Sadly, when they went to Vietnam, they both come back after the first tour, but Jim Driver went back for the second tour. and he got sadly killed, and Rick never got over it. But you will see Dan Hill there, but I'm just to know that it was Jim Driver was this right on again. Here we go. I gotta stop chatting, you know.
I joined the British Army in 1957 at the age of 17 and a half. And within 6 months I was in Cyprus, which was then in terrorist duty. And my job was a field security sergeant, essentially controlling the passage of arms, if we could, stop arms getting to the terrorists, and also working with Greeks and Turks. The Greeks had been terrorists themselves at one time and then retrained. And they knew the habits of the terrorists, so working with them was a pleasure in terms of knowledge. They're very knowledgeable people. I grew up there in Cyprus, I think, a little bit. As a young man, learning a lot from older, experienced men. After 1960, I went to Rhodesia. I went to the Rhodesian police, Northern Rhodesian police, essentially a paramilitary police force dealing with everything from riots to civil disturbances and also normal police work, which in this case, many assaults using machetes, using brute force and things of the nature between tribal elements and also between political elements. I got interested in America because I was a parachutist, and America was the headquarters of the best parachutists in the world. So I came over to join the Marine Corps, the recon unit. When I got here, I realized a better opportunity in the Army. So I went into Fort Dix on July 3rd of 1963. I graduated from OCS. I went to officer training school. I was not a citizen at the time. I was an alien when I went to officer training school at Fort Benning. And when I got out, I was hanging around there with the 2nd Division at Fort Benning, and suddenly there was a great interest in filling the 2nd of the 9th Battalion, an infantry battalion, which very quickly became the 2nd of the 7th Cavalry and joined the 1st Air Cav Division. I went in there as a 1st platoon leader of Bravo Company under Captain Dederick. When I took the platoon at Fort Benning, I told them, look, we are going to survive through some rough times here, and you're going to have to train, and you're not going to like me what I'm going to do to you here now. But the fact is, I live by what I publicly declare. You publicly declare what you're about. Say, I don't believe in being a soft man. I believe in being a tough guy. Then you're going to be held to it. If you keep it in, I never keep anything in. I tell my men emotionally what I feel about them, about what I feel about our unit doing the job. And I never was let down by an individual. Never.
As a second lieutenant, Rick was assigned to the 7th Cavalry. General George Custer's fabled unit. The modern 7th Cav was an elite experimental combat unit, a new chopper corps created especially for Vietnam.
I have today ordered to Vietnam the Air Mobile Division.
Rick was a platoon leader in Bravo Company, 2nd Battalion. His men called him Hardcore.
He was hardcore. It wasn't a nickname, that's who he was. And that's who he made us. So we had to run farther than anybody. We had to do more push-ups than anybody. We had to spend more time in the field than anybody. We had to train harder than anybody.
That training was put to the test within weeks of arriving in Vietnam, when the battalion was ordered into the Ai Drang Valley,
Fire, gentlemen.
soon to be known as the Valley of Death.
Men will die.
These are pictures of Ai Drang from the new movie, We Were Soldiers. This was the real Ai Drang, as shot by a U.S. Army cameraman. It was November 14th, 1965. The 7th Cavalry's 1st Battalion, Rick's sister unit, was being chewed apart. They choppered into a landing zone named X-Ray, a clearing not much larger than a football field, only to find themselves surrounded by thousands of battle-hardened North Vietnamese.
When we landed into X-Ray, there was no doubt what we were going into. It was unbelievable. The noise, the bombs going off, the artillery coming in.
What they soon saw was still worse, bodies strewn everywhere. Rick ordered his men to dig in around them, personally risking sniper fire to survey their position from enemy lines. And where Rick was, radio man Sam Fantino was, connected by a 6-foot cord.
I used to say a 6-foot umbilical cord because wherever he was, unfortunately, I had to go.
Why, unfortunately?
Rick was always out there in front. Rick led his men. He never ordered his men.
When Rick jumps up, you jump up.
Oh, yeah.
As night fell, they settled in, waiting for the inevitable onslaught.
I'm just so scared that I'm, shaking in my boots. And I think everybody's down in the very bottom of their foxholes.
Lieutenant Bill Lund says he'll never forget what happened next.
And all of a sudden over at my left, I hear singing. This guy is moving and it's Rick. And he's walking from foxhole to foxhole singing the dirge. You know how that goes, da, 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 da. And everybody started laughing and kind of doing, and saying, oh my goodness. And of course my thought, and I think everybody's was, well, if he can do that, the least I can do is, sort of sit up and be manly, and be a better soldier.
All of a sudden you heard guys going, yeah, and they're coming up and they're loading their rifles and it just sparked everything.
The next song is The Legend of the 7th Cavalry, written by Lieutenant Rescorla.
Crazy horses sitting below have got their bellies full.
That's the voice of Rick Rescorla, recorded in Vietnam in 1965.
Men of Custer's cavalry, heroes your history, by death without dishonor.
Rick rallied his men throughout that night.
Through the night I hear them moving, Sergeant Flynn. I can hear their bugles playing.
He challenged them to make the enemy pass through a wall of steel. When the attack came, they did.
And when they hit, it just seemed like wave after wave after wave. It just almost like it would never end.
To Vietnam we'll go, to fight a different foe.
The fight at LZ X-Ray was among the bloodiest in U.S. military history. But it was after the battle that Rick Rescorla was nearly killed.
When the battle is done, the battlefield becomes even more dangerous. And that's what a final sweep is.
With bayonets fixed, Rick and his platoon moved forward into a battlefield strewn with dead enemy soldiers, looking for any holdouts. It's called a final sweep. That's when this picture was taken. And that's Rick on the cover of the best-selling book, We Were Soldiers Once. As usual, Rick and his radio man were only 6 feet apart.
We were moving forward into the elephant grass and into the trees.
Suddenly a head pops up, and a machine gun opens up on them. Rick empties his weapon, and finding that he has no grenades, turns to Sam.
I was supposed to be there for him. So I crawled forward, got up to where I thought I could be close enough to throw him a grenade, pulled one of mine off, threw it to Rick. Rick pulled the pin, threw it in there, and eliminated the machine gun nest. Rick had brain matter all over his helmet.
That close?
Oh yeah, we were right there.
If you hadn't saved his life that day, several thousand people might be dead today that aren't.
Absolutely. The amazing thing is that as badly as we got hit the night before, we had 4 men wounded. We hadn't lost a person. Not one person.
Who or what do you credit that to?
There is only one person to credit that to, and that's Rick Rescola.
But his greatest accomplishment would come far from Vietnam and many years later. Do you believe in destiny? A question few of us would ever have to answer seriously. Who would play you in the movie? Our story tonight is about a man whose life story could have inspired any number of movies, including one now playing, and another in the works. Though he wasn't a man who lived for glorification, he did wonder from time to time, had he missed his moment? He had not.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light?
They were soldiers once, veterans of one of the deadliest battles in our country's history.
And the twilight's destiny me.
They gathered before dawn to honor those who didn't come home.
Very deeper night.
So many names, the sun will rise before they've read them all. The men of the 7th Cavalry do this every year on Veterans Day.
Concepcion Jr.
This year, they remember a man who many here say was the bravest man they've ever known. You won't find his name on this wall, because he didn't die in Vietnam. He'd survived the war to meet his destiny decades later, on an unlikely battlefield in a different kind of war. It's not surprising Rick Rescorla would grow up to be a soldier. An Englishman, he was born in a land of legendary warriors, Cornwall, the home of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. They say it's the Celtic blood.
They're a nation of warriors and fighters and people that stood up for themselves.
Mervyn Sullivan was Rick Rescorla's childhood friend. He says even then, Rick was someone to reckon with.
A lovely smile and fair curly hair. Very, very strong. He seemed to be a natural leader at that time.
They grew up in the working class village of Hale, singing about Cornish legends. And that's another thing about the people here.
It's deep within the heart of Cornishmen. In times of trouble, in times of happiness, Cornishmen will sing. They'll sing for any reason, at any time.
The Cornishman in Rick was never without a song, in good times or not. He left home at 18 to be a soldier, saw action in Cyprus and northern Rhodesia. On the home front, he became a detective with Scotland Yard, all by 23. But he was trained to be a soldier. He had a comrade in arms named Dan Hill. You were the reason Rick came to America.
Oh, yeah?
Hill was freelance soldiering, in his words, when he first met Rick in Rhodesia. They would be lifelong friends.
I said, come on, the only people in the world that have the money, the manpower, and the industry to fight communism is America. You want to fight communists? Let's go there.
Vietnam was the new hotspot in 1963. The U.S. Army was looking for men like Rick and Dan, soldiers with combat experience. They enrolled in basic training at Fort Benning, Georgia, officer training after that. Returning to our story, veterans would speak of Lieutenant Rescola with awe. He was a soldier's soldier, but he was many other things as well. The singing soldier had the soul of a poet. He was a romantic. And late in life, after many people would have given up, Rick Rescorla didn't just find love, he found romance.
I was out early in the morning walking my dog, and he was jogging by. And what caught my attention was the fact that he was jogging by in barefoot. And so I said, why are you jogging, without any shoes on? And he said, I'm writing a play about Rhodesia, and I want to know how it feels to feel the earth without shoes on.
Now there were 40 years between Rick and the wars he fought as a young man. He came home from Vietnam when his tour was up. Home was America now. He became a citizen and put soldiering behind him. He got a college degree, and then a master's, and then finally a law degree. By that Sunday in the park in 1998, Rick Rescorla was the father of grown children and single again. And even though he was pushing 60, he was still a magnetic presence.
He asked me out for the following Sunday to brunch, and after that we never ever stopped seeing each other. We saw each other every day. And that was it all. We just knew it. We knew from the beginning we would be together.
Come on, start up.
Susan Greer was single again, too, a 58-year-old mother of grown kids, and yet she was swooning like a teenager. So was the guy they used to call hardcore.
I never had seen Rick really, smitten in love. Something out of a movie love, a beautiful love story.
I love the white rose in its splendor.
And what's a love story without a song?
The white rose in its bloom.
A tender Cornish ballad, The White Rose, was their song.
We would sing in the car as we were going out on the weekends. We would be singing. He would be talking. We never stopped talking. And it just seemed like our life was so filled with
Romance.
romance. Yes, absolutely. We had such passion and romance all the time.
Rose that reminds me of you.
Flowers every week.
Every week.
Poems by email.
Yeah, every day. I used to say every day was a miracle day.
They were married within months, and again, a year later at a church in Cornwall.
Why the renewing your vows? That's after 1 year. It was almost as if there was a premonition of things to come. Hi!
Rick was living on borrowed time. He had prostate cancer, which had spread to his bones.
Might have had 6 months to live. And it wasn't important because I knew he was not going to die of cancer. And I was going to take care of him, which I did.
And astonishingly, his cancer went into remission. You think love had anything to do with it?
I'm sure it did. I'm sure it did.
Still, he dreaded the day he couldn't take care of himself.
He said a million times before, you get 60, 70 years out of it, and then that's it. It's over with. He said, guys like us should have gone out performing some glorious feat, some great feat in a desperate battle and gone in a blaze of glory.
Rick had wondered aloud if his glory was behind him. His uniform now was a suit and tie. In 1987, he became vice president of security at the investment firm Morgan Stanley, which occupied 22 floors at the South Tower of the World Trade Center. Rick was responsible for the safety of nearly 3,000 people, and he knew how vulnerable they were.
He said, I want you to tell me how you'd take this out, how you'd hurt us in this building if you wanted to hurt us.
Dan Hill was a counterterrorism expert before he retired from the military. Rick asked him to survey the building for weak points. He found them in the parking garage.
This is the soft touch. There's no security. They're not checking the loads. They're not checking the drivers.
That's when this Morgan Stanley executive remembers the evacuation drills began.
We started to have, scheduled drills, and they were timed. It was very military.
2 by 2, highest floors first, each floor clear before the next one goes. Nobody in the elevator. Kathy Comerford says not everybody took it seriously.
We still thought it was a joke. Everybody would say, oh, it's a drill time, and half the people would never leave their offices.
That changed in 1993. It was just as Dan said. A truck bomb in the garage killed 6 people, injured 1,000 more. But Rick's plan worked. All of his people evacuated safely. And Rick Rescorla was the last man to walk out of either tower that day. Now he brought Dan Hill back, asking what could be next.
I said, it'll be from the air.
He figured a cargo plane or a fighter jet filled with explosives. He hadn't foreseen a plane loaded with passengers. Rick warned about the terrorist enemy in this independent documentary interview filmed in 1998.
It's just small segments of fanatics and terrorists that perpetrate these battles. They're small hit and run elements, and they base them on the fact that they can hit us at our weakest point because they choose the time and the place.
Rick seemed to know it hadn't been the last time. Returning to our story. For Rick Rescorla, as for all of us, September 11th dawned like any other day, except a day like any other for him might have been a little different than yours or mine. He greeted every day like a gift. He'd outlived the cancer that was supposed to have killed him a long time ago, and maybe there was a reason for that. Susan was up at 4:30 the morning of September 11th to see Rick off, as she always did. She remembers he was dancing into the closet and singing, of course.
Sounds too good to be true.
Well,
That's just it. It was like every single day we were just felt so lucky to have one another, that we had made this journey, that we had found one another.
Rick was at work in the South Tower of the World Trade Center by 8:30. Morgan Stanley occupied offices between the 43rd and the 74th floor. Kathy Comerford and some colleagues were in a staff meeting on the 70th.
We heard these loud explosions. And the next thing we saw was debris flying, papers, all different kinds of debris flying past our windows.
They didn't know what had happened in the North Tower, but they knew exactly what to do.
We were just like, we have to get out of here. And because after 93, we were conditioned just to go. And that's what Rick had drilled into our heads.
They headed to the stairs 2 by 2, just as they practiced, working their way down to the central sky lobby on the 44th floor. At home in Florida, Dan Hill was watching the unbelievable scene unfold on TV, already questioning whether this was an accident or the act of terrorism they'd worried about.
And I said, this could be a hit. And ring, ring, the phone rings. And here's Rick. And he says, Dan, you watching TV? I said, yeah, I got it on. He said, this thing sounds fishy. And I said, what are you doing now? He said, I'm evacuating the building. And he said, get my people out.
I came around the corner, and there was Rick, larger than life, standing there with his bullhorn, giving direction to people just to calm down, that everything was secure, everything was safe.
He kept his orderly evacuation going, despite an announcement that everyone should stay put. And that gave 2,700 people a critical 18-minute head start when the second plane struck the South Tower, only 3 floors above Morgan Stanley.
And there was loud booms, and the lights went out, and the whole building did a shift. It bent over, and the floor was rolling like you were on a roller coaster. I was actually blown from the impact out of my shoes and hit the wall in front of where Rick was actually standing.
Ring, ring, you know. The phone came. I said, Rick. And he said, yeah. He said, you see it? I said, yeah, it's a bad one. I said, much worse than the first one. I said, where are you at? And he said, I'm down about the 40th floor. He said, but luckily didn't get any of my people. And I said, good, get the hell out of that building, man. And he said, as soon as I get my people out, you know, I'll go.
It was bedlam. You thought it was the end. You really did. But once again, all you heard was Rick's voice on this bullhorn going, be still, be calm.
Somebody heading down the stairwell had a camera and stopped to take this picture of Rick and 2 members of his security staff.
He had the cell phone in one hand, he had a bullhorn in the other. And he'd tell them, stay calm, keep moving down the stairs, and he'd have the people sing. And he'd sing, standy now, both straight and steady, don't you see there's pure points gleaming. And then he'd say stuff like, today's a great day to be an American, be proud of Americans. Yeah.
The building buckled again as he herded the last of his people out. Then Rick headed back up, though a company executive urged him to leave.
Rick said, I can't go, I'm not done. There are still people in this building.
To Sam Fantino, it was a given. Like in 93, Rick Rescorla would be the last man out.
No question. No question. The only way he could make sure that everybody was out is if he personally checked and made sure everybody was out. He was responsible for that area. So he was gonna do a final sweep. He's gonna go through that building as he did in 1993, and that's what he was doing,
Well, as he done at Idrang.
as he done in Idrang.
Now he calls Susan.
And I knew that when he called me, I knew I would never see him again, just because of what he said to me, you know. And
What did he say?
he said, "Stop crying." He said, "I have to get everybody out of the building. And if something happens to me, I just want you to know that you made my life." And he made my life. And as he's saying it to me, I had the television on and the building is coming down. And I knew it was all over. So I knew. But he made the choice he knew.
Dan Hill knew it too.
When that building come down that he was in, I'll never forget, I said, "Damn it, Westport is dead." And I said, "He beat me to the barn, and he got the blaze of glory." That's the law of the jungle, the way the cookie crumbles.
Is this the first time you've cried?